A second term for Donald Trump, I truly fear that it's going to destroy us as a republic.
I would be scared to death if Donald Trump were to be reelected for several reasons. One is because I feel his position would be totally self-serving, not in the interest even of his base constituency, let alone the independents who might vote for him.
I think a second Donald Trump term would be a disaster for this country. He's so bitter and so full of hatred and retribution that I think he would further divide this country.
If Donald Trump is elected president again in 2024, that it would be a retribution, to put it in his own words, that a lot of his time and effort would be spent going after those that he perceives to be enemies.
We're not going to make it if Trump's in office. You think it's chaos now? Oh my gosh, times 3.
Second term of Donald Trump would just look like a shit show in the fact that he's just going to keep running through people in cabinets until he finds a sycophant yes man that only does what he wants.
If Trump is elected as president, it's just more of the divisiveness is going to happen. More of the issues that we've seen on January 6th is going to happen. It's bad for this country if Trump is voted in.
I think in a second term, he would be focused mainly on retribution. The issues we'd have with him in the Justice Department and trying to use it to go after his political opponents would be overwhelming and distracting. I just don't think he's focused on what the country needs. I think he's focused on what he needs.
He has said as much publicly, that those who do not get in line or those that oppose him getting to the nomination even will feel his wrath in his second administration. And we need look no further than what he did to prevent the peaceful transition of power in the last election and denying that it was a legitimate election.
I think the second term with Donald Trump would be more what he's already talked about, focusing on retribution and his inability to really fathom the results of his decisions, which would be bad. My personal opinion is anyone who wants to be president is not the person for the job. If a person wants to serve as president and they have the right background, I'm all for them.
If Trump is elected again, I think it's going to look bad for the United States. It's horrible because of his character and the things he's done in the past.
What worries me most about a second Trump presidency is that it seems it's going to be the first term on steroids. He will be even more focused on himself rather than on the good of the country. I think he will be even less willing to work together with others. He will alienate more people, including our global allies.
I can't imagine a second Donald Trump cabinet filled with the kinds of people that would be loyal to Donald Trump while he's not loyal to the United States Constitution.
If we have him, we are going to be in trouble because he doesn't do things the way that he doesn't believe in the rule of law, for one thing. He believes in everything is about him and that he does no wrong. And he does wrong.
I can see a second term presidency leading to more war in Europe. I think that people mistakenly think that if Trump were president, Russia would back down, Vladimir Putin would back down. I think that is incorrect. I think if he won a second term, I think Putin would be emboldened.
I cannot stress enough that I'm scared to death about the specter of Donald Trump returning to the White House. It defies everything that I stand for as it relates to being an American and being an American president. Character does matter.
I think a second term for Trump would be absolutely disastrous for both democracy and freedom in general. You're going to be a dictator on day one. You're going to be a dictator on the first day of your third and fourth term as well, not just the second.
I don't think it would be good if Donald Trump is elected. I hope like heck that he is not elected, but I think that what America would have to look forward to would be chaos.
Donald Trump stating that he would be willing to be dictator on day one if he returns to office, it is deeply disturbing to me. I think it should frighten the living daylights out of anybody. And if there's one person who I think is going to try it, he's the guy who's going to try it.
What scares me the most about a second Donald Trump term is that we're basically heading in the direction of a dictatorship, and that someone who's going to be in office taking retribution against anyone who disagreed with them. And that's what we've seen going on for many years.
I believe if Donald Trump gets a second term, that he might do the same thing that Xi Jinping has done in China and that Vladimir Putin has done in Russia, and set himself up as an emperor. And America's Constitution doesn't have room for emperors. It's for presidents that come and go.
I think a second president you see by Trump would be far more extreme. I think he will actually be able to enact many of the things that he says that he will, because he's putting people in place that will allow him to do it. Trump has certainly learned his lesson from his first time as a president. He will not allow any normal people to have any influence, but will fill every position he can with people that are loyal to him.
There are so many things that worry me about Trump becoming president again. I don't think any person who has gotten close enough to being indicted for a felony should be anywhere near the presidency. I can't guarantee that Trump's not going to be great friends with our enemies, and just whenever it suits him to share a document, or whenever it suits him to do something that he's going to see as advantageous to himself, where he's looking out for himself and the country is just secondary, if that.
I think that a second Trump term could possibly be the end of the United States. I mean, he's called his shots. It's happened before in other countries. It's never happened here before. But if we've got Congress and the Republicans and the Supreme Court that are siding with him, what's the options?
If Trump were to get in, I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, he's going to cut off Ukraine. Ukraine could fall. He's told people that he's not going to defend Europe. Putin will be able to start attacking countries. It'll just be World War III.
A second Trump term, in my opinion, would be chaotic. I feel like the beginning of the term would be spent with Donald Trump figuring out how to get even with those people who did not support him while he was out of office. It would probably involve a pardon of everyone involved in January 6th, which would, in essence, say you can stage an insurrection in the United States, and as long as the right president is in the White House, you can get away with it, and there'll be no consequence for your actions.
There are many alarming things about a second Trump term. First in my mind is what's happening to Ukraine. He is not the president, but he is directing the House of Representatives in foreign policy matters. He has publicly stated he's not going to spend another dime on Ukraine. We are going to see a democracy fall under Russian rule. Now, if you're upset about Afghanistan falling, you should be 10 times more upset about Ukraine falling.
Second Trump term will probably look pretty much like the first one. It'll be highly chaotic. There'll be a lot of disruption. He'll go through several cabinet members and advisors. It'll be like a revolving door in and out of that office. And I think that it's going to severely impact our ability to defend ourselves, and our national security is what I'm mostly concerned about.
The things that Trump has said about what he will do if he wins re-election in 2024, it really concerns me. Obviously, he's angry and vindictive, and I think he will try to use the power of government to punish his enemies, which Obviously, I know, other presidents have done similar things in the past, but I think he's going to take it to a whole new level that will basically test our system. And we have our three branches and the checks and balances, but an executive that is hell-bent on destroying that, it's scary. I'm not sure what will happen. I think we could definitely have a constitutional crisis.
I will not be supporting Donald Trump. I see a man that is not going to be in the interest of this country. I see a president that's going to cause a civil war, if not riots, because of his beliefs and the way he worded that he would ban anybody that was not supportive of him.
My fear is if Donald Trump wins in 2024, that he will do exactly what he says he's going to do. Day one, he's out for revenge. I don't think I have a good enough imagination to really understand what he's capable of and what these MAGA Republican congressmen and senators would be willing to tolerate. We know from the two impeachment votes that, with the exception of one senator, there was no one with moral conviction or courage. And so it frightens me as to what and I think it could well be the end of democracy as we know it, should he be reelected.
With Trump having multiple indictments against him, that's not a good look for any sort of individual in office, whether it be a local level or a president. And I honestly think that if he did get elected again, that we're going to be looked at on a national platform, especially against our allies, whether we can be trusted or not.
I don't think he'd willingly leave office. And we kind of saw that with all of this in the last election. However, I think in the next term, I think he would execute more of his unilateral power through executive order. And, this country has gone through a lot with the pandemic, with the turnover of the extremes and everything. The pendulum's just swinging too far, and it's becoming too much of an extreme adjustment for not only the country, but the economy. The economy looks for stability, and we're not going to have a stable economy if we have these political powers fighting back and forth. It becomes a mortar type of shelling of each other. In the meantime, the rest is collateral damage, the rest of us in the economy.
I think a second Trump term would, I think it would probably look a little more authoritarian. Before, in his last presidency, he had people that kind of stayed his hand a bit. And I think some of those safety nets are gone, and he would run more freely with things that I don't think would work out well for the United States as a whole.
The scariest thing about a second Trump term is that there will be no guardrails, and he's already in the rhetoric, subtle and not so subtle, insinuated things that he would do. I mean, things that would be threatening to our democracy at home, threatening to our power in terms of global standing, economic, political, military. I see him as an incredible threat to this nation's well-being at home and abroad. I think, we may be witnessing if we don't check ourselves, the death knell of our democracy.
I think a second Trump term would look like, well, he's made a lot of threats, obviously, and I don't know that he can necessarily carry out those threats. He might try. My concern isn't as much with that as it is with the damage he could do with us on an international front, what we look like as America. His interpretation of making America great is much different than mine.
I think Donald Trump's second term, if he got into office, would be more about revenge and about Donald Trump than it would be about fixing the problems that we have in America. I don't really feel like he solved any problems the first time around. And based on what he has had to say, I think he's more interested in getting back at people than he is about representing all the people and not just the ones that voted for him. I read not that long ago, that Trump has been involved in over 4,000 court cases. And court takes a lot of time and energy. So how can you be involved in all that and all the bankruptcies and everything and be able to focus on the job of being a president for all Americans and not just the ones he likes? I would say you have to be careful about putting him back in the White House, because this time around, he's not going to be worried about getting reelected. He's going in for revenge, and I don't think that's going to be healthy for America.
A second Trump term would just be a disaster. It would be fraught with legal issues. Nothing would ever get done. He's still going to be fighting his personal legal problems. Everything will be deadlocked and gridlocked.
My thoughts on a second Trump term are really quite concerning. Number one, the world today is more unstable than it was in 2016 or even 2020. And to have a leader of the most powerful country irresponsible at times is just frightening of what could happen. Number two, economically, I think his ideas are very shallow. It seems that tariffs seem to be his only tool in his toolbox, and those don't work, and they just add cost to our economy and typically will probably kick us back into a recession if he would follow something like that.
The second Trump term would be mass mayhem, because I think he would just continue trying to stir up these people that are following him that seem to have lost their common sense and their judgment to be seeing what he's doing and understanding what he's doing and the person that he truly is.
I believe if Trump were to have a second term, he would purposely destroy this country. There is nothing in democracy that he even knows about, cares about, or has any reason to adhere to. He wants to turn this country into countries like his favorite buddies from Russia, from China, from Hungary. He's a dictator.
A second term with Mr. Trump would definitely, in my mind, have the potential to divide the country even further than what it is already divided. We live in a country that is, we compromise. We have a lot of different opinions, and we are free to have our own opinion. So to capitalize on that particular fact, I think is something that the President of the United States needs to do.
Everything that we have always stood for as a pillar within the world will be destroyed if there's a second Donald Trump presidency. In addition, he will absolutely use the office of the presidency to get rid of the different lawsuits and the different criminal proceedings that are going against him at this point in time. I am deathly afraid of a second Trump term and the erosion of the United States, both as a democracy and as a world power, able to exert influence as we have appropriately done for the last half a century or more.
I think a second Trump term would be a catastrophe for the country, that nothing would be done, that it would be more divisive. And Trump has proved that he's incapable of picking subordinates and important positions and keeping them in the administration. So I don't think that we would see any progress. And I think that we are much better off with any other alternative.
I think a second Trump term would be worse than the first. In the first term, he was learning his way around, and I think he was really trying to do a good job to a point, to the extent that his ego would let him. But a second term, he knows the game, and he's already indicated that he's going to go after people, in a big vindictive manner. Anybody that's out for revenge or to use the presidency as a platform to get revenge on your enemies, your adversaries, that's scary. Not only are you going to have to deal with his divisiveness and the constant tweeting and the news coverage and the circus that's going to surround his presidency and make us a laughing stock in the world, but he's probably not going to deliver on a lot of those promises he's making.